I think birdwatching has been considered an older person's hobby for far too long, and I think younger people need to start embracing this wholesome, peaceful hobby. As a birdwatcher myself, I can vouch for the hobby, and I'm going to give you my reasons why I think you should start birdwatching too. So I want to start with my most important point, and that is connecting with nature and getting off your phone. I think most of us know how unhealthy it is for us to be on our phone too much. I genuinely think it's a plague on society, and I can talk about it all day, but it's been well documented that spending too much time on your phone really negatively impacts your mental health. So many people can't communicate with each other properly in person anymore, reduced attention span, and probably hundreds of other problems that I'm not going to speak about right now. So I'm not going to lecture because I have a long way to go with the relationship with my phone. And you might even be watching this video on your phone. But this is all to say that birdwatching is an amazing way to get out into nature and just disconnect for a little bit. It's a cost of living crisis right now, especially in the UK, but the barrier of entry for birding is extremely low. It's as easy as going in your garden or going for a walk and looking at birds basically. When I first started, I literally just went to my local park to look at some birds. Just simply by being present and observing your surroundings, you can see as many as 20 bird species in the space of an hour. It does help that birds are everywhere, so even observing the behaviour of a pigeon can actually be quite interesting. So if you find that you've actually enjoyed bird watching and you want to pursue the hobby a bit further and you're thinking about buying a pair of binoculars, then there's always plenty of cheaper options. People are always selling second-hand binoculars for reasonable prices. Binoculars can range from £20 and go up to thousands. But how much money you put into the hobby, and any hobby for that matter, is entirely up to you. Visiting the nature reserves and bird reserves are quite affordable. And most of the time you only need to just pay for the parking. A lot of the bird reserves actually offer binocular hire. So if you didn't want to buy a pair just yet, you could always just hire a pair from the bird reserves. Now, whilst I want to step away from my phone as much as possible whilst I'm birding, I can also appreciate that our phones can actually be an invaluable tool if used for the right reasons. There are actually some amazing free apps that help with IDing birds. So there's even one app where you can record the bird calls and it will tell you which bird it is. I actually find it adds to the fun of birding when you can see that there's something cool nearby, but you can't actually find it, so you're more determined to find the bird. It's relaxing. It reduces stress. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love the sounds of birds in the morning, and I always have, especially during the summer holidays where you'd hear the blackbirds and the mourning doves. It's just so nostalgic and it just makes me feel happy. I don't know how true this is, but I remember reading at some point that humans like the sounds of birds because when the birds are singing, it means the birds feel safe. And if the birds feel safe, then we should feel safe. So it kind of taps into our primal instincts. There's been many times where I've had a stressful day or week at work and I've just got that really heavy, tight feeling in my chest. And then I go for a walk and I end up seeing birds. And that heavy feeling in my chest slowly starts to dwindle because I'm focusing on the birds and I'm observing them. So I'm not really thinking about my work week anymore. And I hate thinking about work outside of work hours. So I like that birdwatching can take my mind off of the stresses in my life. Now, this isn't strictly specific to birdwatching, but by virtue of being an outdoor hobby and just being out in nature, there's been countless studies that show that the time spent outdoors actually increases mental wellness. This point kind of relates to my previous point, and that is birdwatching can help increase your concentration and help with mindfulness. And that's because you might need to pay attention to any slight movement in the trees or the different bird calls that you might hear. Also paying attention to the direction that the bird calls come from so that you can detect the bird. It's actually a lot harder than it looks, to be honest, but over time you end up getting a knack for it. So since I'm really paying attention to my surroundings, I'm just a lot more present in the moment, and I just find that that's a lot better than constantly being in my head. I've actually taken a couple of my friends birdwatching with me and they all agree that they felt really good after doing it. So not only do you get to be out in nature vibing with the birds, but you're also slowly improving your concentration and just practicing being more present in the moment, which I think a lot of us have a problem with. You can do birdwatching all year round. So this is pretty self-explanatory. With every season comes a change of birds and a change of behaviours. In spring and autumn, we get a lot of migratory birds, so you get to look forward to seeing new birds every season. Certain birds are only visible during certain seasons, so it also gives us reason to embrace the season. You can also do bird watching during all hours of the day. So in the evening, you might be able to spot owls because that's when they're more active. They might be a bit harder to spot, but then that just makes spotting one all the more worth it. I remember when I first saw an owl around sunset, and this was around the time when I first started birding. And just that feeling of seeing a little owl is what made me stick with doing the hobby. So instead of being stuck indoors all winter and having the winter blues, you can just go out and try and spot some winter birds. Bird watching provides a very wholesome community. I think the community is one of the best things about the hobby. It's just a bunch of people that love nature and just like spotting birds. And I honestly believe you'll probably meet the nicest and sweetest people whilst doing this hobby. And that's because a lot of the people actually want you to see the rarer birds. So I've actually been to some nature reserves, and someone might come over and tell us where to find the kingfisher, or if I'm struggling to identify a bird, they might just tell us what the bird is. And I think that's really sweet that so many people just want to share the joy of the hobby. So it's actually quite fun and fascinating. Bird watching has been given a bit of a negative reputation in that it's a boring old person hobby, and that just couldn't be further from the truth. I don't know about you, but I could sit and watch most animals all day because I just find their behaviours so interesting. It's almost like watching a nature documentary play out in front of you if you just sit and observe them. And a lot of birds are just really beautiful and cute. I kind of see it like completing my own little Pokedex, and it's just fun ticking off the different species that I've seen and taking photos of them. Not only that, but some birds can only be found in specific places, so I get to experience new habitats, new environments, all at the same time. Since being a birdwatcher, I actually have found that the way I've travelled has changed quite a bit because now I'm trying to spot birds that I wouldn't ordinarily get to see back home. So a lot of hot countries have a huge variety of exotic, tropical, vibrant, colourful birds. So when you're trying to spot these birds, you find yourself in really unique places. And these are places that you might not have even considered adding to your itinerary. I actually went on a bird tour in Cambodia and I got to see an owl, a hornbill, and plenty of other birds. And this was just off the beaten track in Angkor Wat. And I never would have thought that there would be such a cool variety of birds, but there was not a soul in sight and anyone could have accessed it. It's good for your physical health. Don't get me wrong, you can be a lazy birder, but you probably will end up finding yourself doing a fair amount of walking and standing so that you can actively find the birds. So not only do you get to see cool little birds, but you're also benefiting your physical health and your mental health. So if you like birds or are potentially interested in pursuing the hobby, then I'm going to guess that you're into wildlife in general. And in a lot of these habitats where you'll find these birds, you end up seeing so much other wildlife. I've seen bats, frogs, deer, mushrooms, lizards, newts, voles, loads of things. So it's kind of like a little bonus that when you go bird watching, you get to see lots of other cool creatures. Those are my reasons why you should start bird watching. There's no harm in trying it and just seeing how you find it. And who knows, maybe you'll fall in love with the hobby like I did.